Thank you for joining us for another episode of Ask the RFP Doctor, brought to you by the Center for Procurement Excellence. We're a nonprofit membership organization dedicated to helping you streamline your RFP process through better education, smarter strategies, and more transparency. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive training, discounts to our virtual and in-person events, and the chance to connect with other procurement professionals throughout the year. And if you're planning a professional event or conference, don't forget our CPE Speakers Bureau is available to speak at regional and national gatherings. Now let's get into today's session of Ask the RFP Doctor, where one of our expert RFP doctors will show you how to take on real-world challenges in procurement and supply chain management and break them down into practical strategies you can use right away.
Welcome to Ask the RFP Doctor, CPE's monthly web series where we discuss the latest best practices in procurement and supply chain management.
So we're going to talk about IT disasters and things today. The agenda for this topic is, number one, there's a little background on the landscape of the IT project sector or industry, whatever you want to call it. I'll try to offer a brief philosophical theory of what's going on and why is the industry operating this way. So today is going to be much more, philosophical, almost think of it as life coaching in a way for those of you involved in IT procurements. This is not going to be about tactical step-by-step best practices. We could spend a long time on that as well. That's not the goal for today. We're just going to offer some simple thinking solutions on how to properly approach future technology projects, just the right mindset for them. That's really all we're trying to get to here. It's a little bit softer topic, I would say. Before we dive into it in detail, I want to take you back to the good old days of Ask the RFP Doctor. For those of you who may not know, Ask the RFP Doctor, we've been around for quite some time. And all the way back in our very, very first session was back in April of 2021. And that first topic happened to be about IT procurement, technology procurement, how to look at costs. And then very shortly after that, in fact, 2 months later, our third RFP Doctor topic was about the current state of practice in software RFPs. And then it seemed to be a steady drumbeat of IT technology related topics from there. We had some, we focus on software demonstrations, pitfalls of software RFPs all the way through 2022. And then we took a long break, over a 2-year break, where we didn't talk about anything technology related for whatever reason, just seemed to be the way the topic cycled until summer of 2024, where we walked through a two-step approach on enterprise level software procurements as well. And then since then, to my knowledge, unless I missed it, we have not really covered something technology specific. So I guess in the good old days of Ask the RFP Doctor, we did more of this. And today we'll revisit a little bit. And a few reminders. So I'm about to cover some things that we discussed in these prior videos. And you know what? While I'm thinking about it, let me go ahead and remind you all that these videos are all available. They were recorded and you can access them if these topics look interesting to you and you don't either remember them or you weren't participating in RFP Doctor back in the day. You can go watch them. I'm going to drop a bunch of links into the chats so that you can get to those if you would like. But a few reminders of things that we covered in those prior videos. First is just the state of performance across the IT industry. And there's some lot that can be said. This was a study. It's a little bit older now, actually, at this point in time. But this study took a look at nearly 600 business and IT professionals, asked them their thoughts about IT procurements and implementations. And some things stand out to you here, right? So we have 3/4 of professionals thought that their IT projects were always or usually doomed from the start. They take longer than anticipated. They're not considered a success. It's just that is the norm sometimes. There are multiple ways that you can look at this in the various studies and literature. The chaos report, which I know there's some questions on methodology here, but overwhelmingly shows that IT projects are challenged and failed at a rate that is far beyond other industry sectors. Oxford took a look at this along with McKinsey. Similar results, right? 66% cost overruns, schedule overruns, shortfall in actual scope that was delivered versus the original plan and intent. And then that same study of nearly 600 IT executives talking about doom projects. If you want more of just the state of the industry, I've got the screenshot on here that we have a 2-pager that walks through some of these results. We're more than happy to share that with folks as well. Another fun one that we covered in a prior session with you all was the dominant dozen early warning signs of whether your IT project is starting to head towards failure. We've got a handout on this too that summarizes it and gives you the citation to the original study. But one of the interesting things here is that all of the issues, the dominant dozen early warning signs of IT project failure, all of them related to people and process related things, not the technology itself. So this is maybe an indicator that some of the things that are causing challenges in our technology projects, it's not the technology itself. It's something else going on related to our process for how we are approaching these projects, the people, how they're involved, and so forth. That's where your dominant dozen challenges are coming from, according to prior research at least. So again, we've covered those things in greater detail in the prior videos. I put those in the chat. You're more than welcome to check those out at your leisure. But we wanted to remind you of that. And, since then, it's been a few years since we've covered some of these things and talked about the IT sector. And I don't know, the fortunate or unfortunate thing here in IT is that this just seems to be the gift that keeps on giving. And performance, there's still issues that continue to happen. So a brief perusal of the news and other things out there in recent years, like it doesn't take very much digging and searching to find headlines like this. You can find it all over the place. So doomed challenges. Some of these go back a little bit. Some of them are newer. But all this stuff, projects failing on CIO here. There's just, you see these headlines all over the place. I've never seen such I don't know, a lot. A popular thing to do, I guess, in the journalism and technology world is to chronicle the biggest disasters and blowups in technology history. Just Google IT project disasters, and you'll find all kinds of lists. And there's top 10 lists and so on here. Now we're starting to look at specific elements of how IT projects are delivered, and you're starting to see headlines like this came out recently, a study that found agile projects to perform much worse than non-agile projects and so on. The Government Accountability Office in the U.S. governments got involved as well. They've gone back and looked at things. Just look at how upfront they are. Like, this is the U.S. government who spends more than $100 billion just to manage existing IT systems every year. And then, lots of acquisitions of new ones. And here's what they say is like too frequently they are over budgets, delayed. I mean, how often do you see the government coming right out and saying, yeah, these projects are a smoking, smoldering dumpster fire. We admit it. Like, no, normally the rule in politics is never admit wrongdoing, never admit things that are wrong. But it's such a well-known, pervasive fact that even the government's coming right out and saying, yep, this is an issue. You can see it on, there's Wikipedia pages devoted to this and lists of failed and over-budget projects. That's always fun to look at. The GAO, back to them, talked about their high-risk series. They've looked at specific recommendations. They made more than 1,800 recommendations to public sector agencies on how they can improve their IT management and delivery, and many of them have still not been implemented and so on. I got a big tickle out of this study that came out recently, just a couple months ago here in 2026. This is actually from Australia, so not here in the States, but it's all the same names who are involved. This was a study done of a handful, a couple dozen projects, big failures in the IT sector in the Australian public sector market. And here's the quote that I really liked. Using large consultancy firms for strategy and program management of these projects was consistently correlated with budget overruns, timeline extensions, and higher risk profiles. So, we think that IT is big, risky, hairy, scary, complex. So let's go and bring in the fancy pants consultants. It's not going to save you. In fact, what the data shows is that is correlated with a higher chance of failure. So that was interesting to look at as well. And there's just all kinds of things here. I liked some of the way that this was described here by PC Magazine, of all places, on 20 biggest software failures of all time. They said this. This was their leading paragraph heading into the 20 biggest flops. So they said, software is a funny thing. You can't touch it, but yes, you can certainly pay for it. It weighs nothing, but it takes dozens or hundreds of people to make, to implement, and sometimes it just flat out doesn't work. And that just seems to be the way things are. Common areas in our minds of failure is Three big broad categories. We're not going to talk about all of them here today, but there's the procurement stage of technology projects and all the upfront planning. There's the implementation stage, and then there's kind of long-term adoption and usage of the technology as well. All of these, you can have failures in either one. Actually, for research on this topic, I found top 10 lists of IT failures that were related to each of these stages just by themselves. But today we're going to focus more on the procurement side. And by procurement side, our usual graphic here of proposals, all the upfront work and scoping and all of that, proposals coming in, all of that, all the way through the negotiation phase and getting the contract signed. So basically, anything prior to signing the contract, we're going to consider in view here today. But I'll comment on some things that relate to implementation and adoption because during your clarification negotiation phase, before you sign the dotted line of the contract, there's quite a bit that you can do that will affect implementation and adoption later. So I'll mention it. Okay. Now, all of that backdrop, all these areas of failure, the almost kind of just normal joking about how tough this industry is. The obvious question is like, what is going on here with these projects? Like, why is this the case? Why are there top 10 lists and all this stuff? And I'm going to offer a theory that is we're not going to get into all the tactics and the specifics and the best practices. I'm going to go a little more philosophical here. It's something we've seen across hundreds of organizations that we've helped with procuring and implementing IT and technologies is I think some of it just comes down to the fact that we let IT bamboozle us, hence code words and things for the day. But we allow technology to confuse us, to bamboozle us, to be a smoke screen where we say, it's complex. I don't understand all the nitty-gritty details. I'm not the subject matter experts. And I think sometimes we can lose our wits. We can lose our project management fundamentals. We can lose our procurement fundamentals because that technology is different. It's so complex and so on. And I'll give you a few examples of things that we have seen in our years of experience with technology procurements, just to illustrate this point. So, example number one, this is a review of a large enterprise implementation, so ERP system actually. Won't share too much information about this, but something that we saw, we were not involved in this project, but we were brought in essentially after the fact to review a large implementation and do an assessment of it and essentially why did it go wrong, back to the theme of all the failures out there. And I'm going to pull out this one teeny itty bitty example of something we saw that got put into the contracts and then was implemented. Is there was an early deliverable in the invoicing schedule for the eventual contract that was signed with the ERP system and implementation teams that were procured, selected, and brought forward. One of the invoicing schedule items was for that software provider to provide a work plan. They're going to provide a more detailed work plan. Of course, you know how it goes in some of this stuff. They say, we can't tell you that up front. We got to have a nice discovery phase, got to work together, but then we'll produce a real detailed work plan for you, Mr. and Mrs. Clients. And apparently this client said, sure, that makes sense. Let's build it into the invoicing schedule. Well, in doing the forensic review of this implementation effort and what went wrong, we asked for a copy of the work plan for our analysis because we saw it in the deliverable. And what it was a PowerPoint. It was under 50 slides. And the billing rate for this, I can't remember. I have to go pull the records. I actually think it was more than $1 million, but at least it was hundreds of thousands of dollars for this work plan. So just think about that. Pick a 40-slide PowerPoint and hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're talking about, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars per PowerPoint slide. I just want you all to know that at the moment I'm 29 slides into our deck here. So that should be approximately, Jake, I should get paid about $290,000 for this. So I'm just standing by for that. Okay. In the IT world, apparently that's okay. And we'll put it in the contract and we'll sign it and then pay it. And then we took a look at, thank you, Jake, checks in the mail. The thing that was really sad about this too, you look at this and you're like paying hundreds of thousands of dollars or maybe even $1 million for a PowerPoint deck of a work plan that I guarantee you very few people even read and doesn't even make sense. Well, we decided to go back and read it. And we went and pulled the original proposal and guess what we found? The work plan submitted here was nearly identical to what was included originally in the proposal for free. Yet here it was built into the contract, approved, and millions of dollars flow out the door to pay for it. How can this even happen? Like in what other project sector would this ever happen? that we are allowed to postpone the work plan until after the contract is signed, to do a discovery phase, to develop a PowerPoint after said discovery phase. It looks like the same thing that we were given prior to the discovery phase. And then somehow the internal client's project management team agrees to pay the bill. Only in IT, I'm going to offer the theory, right? It's just bamboozlement. This is big. It's complex. It's hairy. It's scary. There's a lot going on. The work plan must be a lot. We have a lot of meetings. We talk about things, and oh, here's a big PowerPoint, and I don't know what it all means, but the vendor hopefully does, and let's pay them. Keep this thing moving. The only real explanation I can come up with is they get bamboozled. I mean, if paying $1 million for a PowerPoint deck is not bamboozlement, then I don't know the word bamboozlement and what it is truly defined as in the dictionary, because I'm sure it's in the dictionary, right, Jake? Bamboozlement, that's in there. Software demos, another spot for detailed confusion here. So this was a statewide comprehensive tax system. This is something that we were helping with actually at the time. We required the proposing software providers to go and find one of their current users, one of their current end clients, and we had that end client perform the demo, not the supplier themselves, not the technology provider themselves. So we gave them a script. It was pretty simple. It was basic. It had them kind of walk through key things. We asked for up to an hour maximum, high-level demo, not super technical. We just wanted to see, hey, can you show us an installed system that's operating that's roughly similar to what a current client is trying to procure? And let's see how well the other end users can navigate the system. It's a nice, simple way to look at user experience and so on, and interfaces. Now, how the vendors responded to this, of course, you can only imagine, right? One, super disorganized. They jumped around from requirement to requirements. At the end, we had to even confirm whether they had met everything. They didn't bring in an end client. They did it themselves, and they still couldn't manage the time. Second vendor, they couldn't do everything within the time limit, and they said that nobody could do this. No company could ever get through all these requirements. Of course, we ended up demoing 5, and 3 of the 5 got through it. So, be careful what you say out loud here and blaming the client after the fact. And got to tell you, like, stepping back here, if you have a vendor that comes in and says like, hey, client, you asked me to do too much in the demo, and it's possible that they are true. But again, we ran multiple demos, and I'll get through the rest of them here in a moment, and multiple firms were able to get through it. Ask yourself this. If this is a statewide or a organization-wide IT implementation, and your potential vendor that you're going to select can't get through a 1-hour schedule and doesn't know enough in advance to let you know, hey, client, this isn't even realistic. They just decide to go in there and try to do the work, and then they find out later that, while you're live in the midst of it, that they can't do it. They can't manage a 1-hour demo time slot. You really want to give them a multi-million-dollar contract to touch all of your integrations and affect all of your end users? I mean, at a certain point, we have to step back and remember our common sense and not get bamboozled and say, wait a minute. You came to the demo. You had the script for weeks. You never told us it was going to be unrealistic. You tried to get it done. You failed. And then you came to us and blamed us. In what other industry would that ever be okay? And just got to not lose sight of some of our basics here. One of the vendors used a PowerPoint to show the demo. So they didn't actually have a system. They decided to pull up a PowerPoint as if, again, what other industry would it be okay to sell off of a PowerPoint rather than the real thing? One had the client come in and they did the demo, but they had the client read word for word. So that kind of tells you, like, can't even go off script here. Can't even show us a working system. And one of the vendors failed to show another operational system. And actually it was 6 where they flew in a client and they went through everything just fine. Well, which one are you more comfortable with working with right now? If you just let the vendors come in and bamboozle us with the razzle-dazzle demo, and I call them professional demo artists that are employed by all of these firms, they fly around and they demo things. They know what to click and not to click and how to make it look awesome, and frankly, how to lie by omission oftentimes. And I bet all 6 of these demos would have been fantastic if we had done it via the traditional demo artist way. Another one here, this was a statewide facility management information system. Similar thing, we had the same structure for the demos here. And 5 days prior, one of the vendors says, hey, we can't do it because of confidentiality. Our clients won't do it. Another one sent us a PowerPoint of the demo instead, and so on. So you start to see all this kind of stuff. Now, we talk to our evaluators through these projects, and here's some quotes from them. Hey, seeing the actual thing working, this was the best. Highly recommend it. It's really important to have other clients show how the product is being used. keep it to under an hour, keeps it simple, helps us make a decision. We can always do more detailed demos later. Of course, all these suppliers are going to recommend a detailed discovery phase anyway, and have a dragged out negotiation process. So some of these things are really basic, yet the industry doesn't operate like that at all. Now, I'm not getting into all the tactics and the specifics of how to do things. If you want more information specifically on demos, we covered some of that in the prior videos. That's not the purpose of today's video. Today, I'm just trying to show when and where IT projects get us to be bamboozled as a project team. And yes, that's a word now. So here's some sources of the bamboozlements. Typically, in larger technology projects, there's more market research going on. There's a greater or longer list of scope and requirements and trying to envision a future state. Typically, you have, unfortunately, clients will mix the idea of wanting to improve their internal processes and procedures while also simultaneously upgrading the technology solution, and mixing those and not extracting them is a big challenge that causes confusion. You tend to get larger proposals on average on a traditional IT procurement than other types of procurements. You get longer demos. You mix together the fact of what team, what company, what implementer with the product itself. That gets things confusing for the evaluators. You've got a heavier involvement of marketing, sales, and business development teams in the IT sector than really any other industry sector out there. In fact, the IT sector, usually their normal mode of operations is they don't even assign who the project team is to implement until after the contract has been signed. So literally the first time that your implementation team is seeing the scope and requirements in details is after the sale has been made and the ink is dried, in many times, if you're just doing things traditionally. Vendors insisting on the quote unquote agile approach, and I've got quotes around planning because agile most commonly, not in its true philosophical theory of how it's actually supposed to be used, but in how it's used predominantly across the industry, is a total failure. And it's used as an excuse to not plan more than actually agile itself being faithfully followed. We let integrations, data migration, all those considerations cause confusion. Frankly, there's a lack of project management capability and skill set in the IT industry. They are the worst project managers of any industry that we've seen. They're kind of 101 level compared to other industries, might be at the graduate school level. We're talking maybe even elementary school sometimes in the IT world. No offense, folks who are in the sector. And then overlooking the holistic organizational change management approach, typically using a new technology will impact how people do work, and that's got to be considered as well. So I acknowledge that there's a lot of reason why an IT implementation has these various areas that cause extra bamboozlement than other types of projects that we are procuring. But I'll offer the very simplifying solution here without getting into tactics and best practices. I do think that at the highest level, we can approach this in 3 quick steps. Number 1, step back and take a deep breath. Don't let all of that big long list of things that are scary and hairy in IT projects worry us too much. It's still a project. There's a lot of our procurement and project management fundamentals still apply. It still applies. Remember, number 2, 95%, especially in a software implementation, is if you just envision, rather than looking at a screen with a technology solution on there, and instead you just picture a piece of paper that people are, checking boxes and writing things and handing that to different departments, in the old school walk down the hallway type of fashion. It's a really good mental model for understanding how the technology is going to work and accomplish actual workflows within your organization. That 95% of this is doing a lot of what you already know how to do. We're just putting paper on a screen. And yeah, sure, maybe you're upgrading an existing system that's already on a screen. So yeah, Brian, it's not paper, but just envision the process you already know in terms of pencil and paper. And this form gets done, this thing gets submitted for approval, this routes from this department to that department, they're on floor 3 instead of floor 1. And just try to picture yourself physically walking the process down. And that will demystify a lot of it. And then step 3 is just ask yourself always, does this just make basic sense to me? What I'm hearing from my vendor. Does that make sense to me? What they're saying, what they're describing. Can I picture this in a physical format? And just stepping back philosophically and saying hey, this isn't actually rocket science. Yeah, maybe it is legitimately more complex than other types of projects we're procuring and implementing. However, it still isn't rocket surgery. We're not doing rocket surgery. It's not rocket science. We're not doing, neurosurgery here. We should be able to explain this stuff and think about it and not let ourselves get bamboozled. I think a lot of times we are heard, or we are primed heading into a large software procurement, for example, that, hey, this is hard, this is scary, and therefore we then think that everything we hear and everything we encounter is going to be hard and scary, and it's the opposite of the placebo effect. This is actually a scientific term called the nocebo effect, that if you think something is going to hurt and be painful and confusing, then oftentimes that's how you experience it. And I would just say, let's step back. Yeah. And it's not rocket surgery here, Lynn. So we'll just step back, and rocket surgery doesn't even make sense. So it would fail step number 3, of course. Okay. I guess if we're going to Mars or something where we're going to need some surgeons up in space, it'll be a whole new thing. So, all right. Other thoughts. So what this all tells you is that in general, a different approach is needed for all of the things that we normally do in the IT procurement world. So if you think about it, right, like we usually spend more time doing market research when it comes to an IT project, scoping things, gathering requirements, and we spend more time in procurement. These are projects that are notoriously, just on average, they take longer to procure. And I'm just talking about averages. I'm not talking about best practices here. So, for example, the agency where we did the forensic review of their ERP system, one of the comments that we heard from the leadership there is, hey, we procured this thing the same way that all of our peers did. And it's like, well, yeah, look at the data. Half of those fail. So clearly, just spending more time in detailing out requirements and getting into more detail during evaluations, all of this happens in most technology procurements, yet the results speak for themselves. So need a different way of thinking here. And I think part of it is just, let's just calm down here. Our project management teams still need to perform their due diligence. You can't just accept a PowerPoint as a work plan and pay it. I mean, we have to sit down, do real work, review the proposal, have it make sense, have a schedule. I hear this all the time from software providers and implementation teams as well, and other IT consultants. Oh, it's too complex, I can't explain it to you, or we can't schedule it out. And in fact, sometimes they argue with you and like accuse you. They're like, you're asking me for a schedule. That's such waterfall thinking. That's not the right way to do it. Don't you know about agile? And then they make you feel bad and sidestep the schedule altogether, right? So always remember, only in an environment of confusion and too much detail and overwhelming information can we in fact become bamboozled as a client organization making a purchase. It's not like these client organizations are trying to lead to these failures in their IT projects. It's because they got bamboozled. Stuff happens, and we're overly complexifying things. There's another good word, complexifying. So some context, remember we talked about this. We usually spend all this extra effort in IT procurements, yet they have the worst performance of every project type that there is. So something else here has to give. And yeah, there's a lot of best practices, like for ourselves here, our team at Simplar of the RFP Doctors, for example. We released this report just last year on behalf of the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine down here in the States. This was a guide for procuring and managing advanced technologies for all the departments of transportation and similar public sector transportation groups. Like, that's out there. It's free. You can get to it. I can put the link in the chat if you guys want. But there's a lot of best practices. I know that wasn't the purpose of today's session. Today was a little bit more higher level. So thank you for listening to that and a little bit of the soapbox and yelling from yours truly.
This has been Ask the RFP Doctor, brought to you by the Center for Procurement Excellence.